Hey, on today's podcast, my son Andrew and we interview Florida State Trooper Travis Manning. Lots of you know Bella Manning. She's a member of our church. Travis is Bella's dad. And in this podcast episode, Travis shares his Christian testimony. Also, he shares some law enforcement stories, and he explains how his responsibilities as a law enforcement officer and his Christian faith have intersected. So I benefited from this discussion greatly, and if you stay with this until the end, I believe that you will benefit greatly as well. So here's today's Strength for Life podcast.
Welcome to the Strength for Life podcast with Pastor James C. Johnson, a ministry of NorthStone Baptist Church in Pensacola, Florida.
Travis Manning, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, man. So you might, if we had an award for something like this, you might get the award for the coolest automobile in the parking lot when you show up for the podcast.
One of the six. He's got it. It's a very nice Challenger, though.
Yeah. Tell us about that vehicle, man.
My patrol car is a Dodge Challenger, so I got used to driving that car, and I was like, I really like this car, and it was coming up time for me to get something new. And, my kids are starting to get a little bit older. We had all that stuff squared away, and then, talked to Kelly, my wife, and me and her both were kind of into cars when we were younger, and it was just like one of those things. And,
okay.
Let me ask you this. What's the fastest you've got the patrol car up to? I'm not going to ask about that car.
Well, there was a time a few years ago, it was on the interstate, so, open road, and one of our guys he was on a traffic stop and was in the middle of a fight. Calls on the radio, he needs help. You can tell that he's in a struggle. So in instances like that, it's authorized to get there, any means necessary. And so I got about 145 on I-10.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got from Pine Forest Road to Highway 29 in 40 seconds or something. Yeah.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
So the police vehicle, is it souped up in ways different than the Challenger you drive?
Well, it is in different ways. Yeah. The police car, it's I don't want to bust anybody's bubble out there but it is just the same motor that's in the Charger patrol cars. Mm-hmm. So it's got a 5.7 liter Hemi.
Okay.
And but the Challenger it's got different rear end ratio. The gears are different and it has a different transmission and slight modifications to the intake and the exhaust.
Okay.
And it makes a big difference.
Okay, so to be clear, if the two vehicles are racing, the one you have residential private, and then who's going to win? If the driving,
the one that I have, the one that's in the parking lot out there is got about 150 horsepower more than the patrol car.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so if the police were chasing you and you were,
you can never outrun. You can't outrun the radio.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I've done a couple ride-alongs with a couple guys in our church. So you're a state patrol police officer, right?
Would you say state trooper?
State trooper.
State trooper. Yeah. So how would your job differ from just a local law enforcement person?
Well, there's a pretty clear dividing line between what I do and what deputies do, and I'm highway patrol, so most of my actions revolve around vehicles, motor vehicles, the roadway, the interstate, rest areas, anything traffic related. And then whereas a deputy, he's doing a lot of more domestic calls where he's not going to clear up a 10-car pileup on the interstate, and I'm not going to go into somebody's home and break up a husband and wife who's been arguing with each other. So there's kind of,
mm-hmm.
There's in some ways more hands-on than we are, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And they work together a lot more, whereas there's often it's just me. I'm the one-man show. I show up and there's fire department, ambulance, EMS, witnesses, victims. I got to deal with everybody.
Yeah. So how did you get into law enforcement? I know you've been in the military. Would you talk a little bit about your military career and then how you transitioned into law enforcement?
Yes. So my dad's from around here, and he had a pool company, Manning Pools, and I worked with him when I was like your age, and then it's time to get out from underneath Dad's wing, and so that's when I joined the Air Force, and we moved away. That was an awesome job. I went in as a jet propulsion apprentice, so I was going to work on jet engines and stuff, and then I got the high speed volunteer and come be with us briefing at basic training. So I volunteered for it was then called Tactical Air Control Party, TACP. And, ETAC, JTAC was like some of the career fields there. And, so as soon as I got out of basic training, I went and did training at Fairchild Air Force Base Survival School and then Herbert Field. And my job in the military was like calling in and directing close air support airstrikes for ground forces. So I was always with the Army on the ground. Back then they couldn't trust the Air Force didn't trust the Army to call in a close air support airstrike because they were worried that they were going to bomb the wrong people, or the guy on the ground, if they didn't know what he was doing, he could fly jets into each other or fly jets right over the top of artillery that was shooting, or fly jets into airspace where, like, say, a medevac helicopter was coming in or something. So there's a lot of deconfliction. And not to mention, it was pretty cool. Like a day at work was be like, go to the bombing range, identify some targets, put together what's called a 9-line. And then we would have scheduled blocks of time where aircraft would check in. We had special radios. We'd talk to the planes and, give them the target array and then call in airstrikes on targets out there. It was pretty cool.
Go to the bombing range is such a boss sentence to say. It's crazy.
Right.
It was good. It was a good job. And so, it was a lot of deconfliction. We had a lot of cool equipment, and we had a standard. And in my career field at the time, we had to carry our radio that could talk to the Army. So we had a bunch of communications equipment, batteries to go with it, water and ammo. So usually my pack was always heavier than everyone else's pack, and we always trained to be. You never wanted to be that guy who was like. Needed someone to like, hey, can you grab a couple batteries out of my bag because my back is hurting or something. So we always trained above the standard, so we were never fell short.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And so I got out. I enjoyed it, but then there were some things about it, like being deployed and being away from the family. And I did 2 combat tours, and on my second one had a few life-changing moments, and came back. Decided to start a family. Me and Kelly decided to have kids. And then once my daughter was born, Bella, it was going on deployments and stuff just wasn't that appealing anymore. And I got out, got into pool business with my dad. Things were booming, and then that was 2007, 2008, and then the housing bubble happened. And everything tanked, and I passed up a $75,000 reenlistment bonus. They wanted me to sign up for another 6 years. I was like, nah.
In the Air Force.
Yeah. And so I did the pool thing, and eventually the economy got going again. I got my contractor's license. I did subcontracting in-ground swimming pool liner replacement. Usually worked alone, and I would mainly work for my dad's company, but then there were a couple other times I would get contracts from other companies, and it was that was another awesome job. And but started getting into my mid-30s and was thinking, man, working out in the sun all day long is starting to take a toll on my skin and everything. And I had originally looked into getting into the highway patrol when I first got out of the military, but back then there was a shortage of troopers down south, so it was almost like a mandatory sign up, do a year or 2 down south, pay your dues, and then we'll let you come back up here. Maybe, but it's all about open positions. If everything's full, you can't come up here until somebody retires or gets out, and then there's a position comes open, then you can come back up here. But over a period of a few years, come to find out, the tables turned, and this area became critically short on highway patrol.
Okay.
And it was pretty much a guarantee. And
Yeah.
when my wife's parents had got word from someone that they was they're really looking for some troopers up here, and passed the word on to me, and one thing led to another, and
Yeah.
next thing you know, I'm at the academy in Tallahassee.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How many years have you been a trooper?
7+.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the craziest excuse anybody's ever given you when you pulled them over for speeding or for some kind of traffic citation?
I mean, there's a whole spectrum of responses that I have gotten.
Okay.
I've gotten people that were like right in literally in the middle of a medical emergency, and
It was valid.
it was very valid.
Yeah,
Yes. And I'd say pretty crazy, but I pulled over a lady speeding one day, and I don't, how long have you lived in this area?
8.5 years. Yeah.
Okay, so it was around the time there was almost like a Bonnie and Clyde type characters. They were on the loose in Beulah.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Oh yeah.
And I pulled this lady over. She stopped, thankfully, but when I got it to the window.
So like Bonnie of the Bonnie and Clyde, you pulled her over?
No. She was a mom, and her children had got off the school bus and were home alone.
Oh, okay.
And the news had just reported that they were in that neighborhood.
Oh,
so she was trying to get home fast as she could.
That's crazy.
I don't blame her. A mama try to mama bear,
Yeah. So
Okay.
and I was like, oh, that's totally legit. Godspeed. So,
Right, yeah. that's-
What's the fastest you've caught somebody going?
I got a young military guy in a souped up Mustang at about 125.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I-110.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder in his military career how citations like that affect him.
He appeared to be a problem person, because when I pulled up his driving record, the citation that I was writing him was going to put him at over the max limit of points per 12 months, and
okay.
his license was going to get suspended from that ticket. So
Okay.
he was a repeat offender.
Hypothetically, you catch me speeding. How far back can you go checking my driving record? Because I've been good for about 10, 15 years. But when I was a teenager, crazy stuff. Up in Minnesota, like, could you see all
Yeah,
that?
no, I can only see primarily what your driving record is.
Ooh, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for that information. So primarily just in Florida. All right, I've been an angel when I've been living down here, so I'm good.
Yes.
I'm good. Yeah.
Mr. Manning, so you're a pretty buff guy, and I assume from military experience and being in law enforcement, you got to you got to stay in shape for those things. But what are some of your exercise habits or workout routines that you do to stay in shape?
Well, staying in shape is my therapy, and I have been training for decades, and I don't train like, a lot of people kind of fall into the trap of like, they look at the magazines and the stuff on YouTube, and they're training as if they're a bodybuilder. And, bodybuilders is this very specific type of exercises, and those guys are on taking a lot of chemicals and everything like that. So their bodies will respond to those kind of programs. I kind of talked to like a couple of different people. I had a not throwing shade on these guys, but I had a friend from back in the day who was ended up going to prison. And when he came back, like 10 years later, he was pretty jacked. And, I was like, what we are doing? He's like, man, we worked out every day. That's all we had to do. And so I was like, take a little bit of some of his things, and then some of my like military guys that were like, high level operator type dudes that, they were just cut from a different stone, as they say. These guys could hang out all night long and then show up at the track the next day and run circles around everybody, just like, and so I started thinking like, what are my goals? And my goal is to just be the best version of me I can be. And so I train what I would describe as like functional fitness.
Yeah.
So a lot of my stuff is the old school, like football compound movements, like deadlifts, pull-ups, squats. I necessarily don't do squats as much anymore. Kind of stay away from putting all the weight on my back.
You just don't max rep with squats. you do like a mid-level amount of weight, I think you said.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just because you're not trying to hurt yourself.
No, I'm just trying to at this point, I'm holding the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you
I've
go.
gotten about as far as I could get, and I'm just trying to
Yeah.
hold what I got.
Right, that's good. Yeah.
You know? But so I would say I train pretty much total body workout every time I train. And you got lower body, push, and pull. And I will, one of those three will be my primary objective for the workout, but I will do a little bit of legs. And I'll say if I'm doing push exercises as my primary, I will do one or two back or pulling exercises to offset, to just kind of keep it balanced, and I'll put a little bit of blood in my legs one way or another. I never repeat the same routine, and anything that I can do from the standing position, I do it from standing, because that's just more natural.
Interesting. That's cool. So with your job right now, how often do you have to use, being in good shape? Is that really beneficial for what you're doing right now?
I would say yes, it is.
Yeah.
Just the real basic explanation would be that, unfortunately, the times that we live in are getting a little bit more crazier.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's evident to some people, but if you're out there on the streets, it's like the temperature is rising, inflation, and just the way things are. And, unfortunate sometimes if you're not in shape and you get in an altercation, some of those officers are too quick to go, like, say, to their firearm or something like that. So for me, it's not only is it it's for my safety, it's for the safety of the person that I'm dealing with, and a lot of times this has been documented through like prison interviews and stuff like that, where people that have committed crimes against law enforcement officers, like kill somebody on the side of the road or something like that, they your appearance and how you carry yourself, and those guys, those street people, are savvy, and they will size you up, and if you look the part and they can tell, and then they're not going to try you. Should you be maybe less than capable, and they sense that, it just, the danger level goes up. I'm not saying that's going to happen every time. They're going to obviously there would be a lot more incidents, but the times that it did go completely south, and they asked, like, later on, the guy agreed to give an interview. That was his, was like, this guy just was a soup sandwich, and I felt like I could take over the situation. So that's part of why I do it for my job. It's not necessarily to be overpowering every person that I come in contact with, but I just want to be the best version of me.
100%. How often have you gotten into physical altercations?
I say over the years, 7+ years, I've gotten into 2 like really major altercations. One occurred several years back, and it was a drunk driver, hit and run drunk driver, and he had crashed into some people. And then concerned citizens had followed him down the road until he pulled into a gas station, and then they blocked him in. And then I got there, and it was just an older gentleman, maybe 10 years older than me, and he was intoxicated. And he told me, he said, I'm not going back to jail. Well, I ain't going. And I was like, well, you're going. It's the easy way or the hard way. And so we played that game. He was backing up from me, and we kind of backed around his truck. He tried to get in the truck, and I shut the door, opened it up, I shut it. And he was backing up saying, you stay back. And at some point he balled his fist up at me. And there's certain thresholds that we have where, there's passive resistance, and then there's active resistance. So when if you're dealing with law enforcement and you ball up your fist and you take a stance like you're fixing to throw a punch, okay, that's green light. And so at that point, I used one of the kind of like a jiu-jitsu takedown, arm drag takedown, and we were on the ground. And basically, once I got him down, he was drunk, and he had explained he'd recently had a back surgery, so he wasn't doing too good. But anytime you're in a struggle for life or death almost, he was on his belly, I was on top of him, and I wanted him to give me his arms from underneath him, and he wouldn't. And I couldn't just like get a hold of his arms. Even So I called for help, and I just held him on the ground. We had, at that point, this was a few years ago, so it wasn't as bad as it is now. But the crowd started gathering, everybody with their phones out, and I started, within maybe a minute and a half, I could hear sirens in the distance coming. The cavalry was on the way, and so I didn't want to be that guy that needed help with this, old drunk basically. So we learned some moves of like what's known joint manipulation, where you can induce compliance through pain basically. So I got a good angle on his shoulder and had his arm one of his arms behind his back, and I was able to convince him to give me the other arm. So I was putting the cuffs on right about the time that it was like a deputy slid in from each direction sideways, jumping out of their vehicles. And
all right.
Yeah.
So you got control of the situation just as they were pulling in.
Yeah, just as they were pulling in. Yeah.
That's a good story.
Yeah. So, and then we got into a similar altercation up off 9 Mile Road just about a year ago with another drunk hit and run. He had caused a very serious collision right there where the Waffle House is, UWF Waffle House.
Yeah.
And a guy ran off into the woods, and so we're there. It was a midnight call, so it was about 5:30 in the morning, and it was a catastrophe basically. And we're all standing there, we're interviewing people, we're getting the situation under control, and all of a sudden, one of the witnesses looks over, and he's like, "Hey, there he is, right there!" And the guy had came out of the woods and we just mingled into the crowd, as if no one's going to notice him. But then the witness spotted him.
Okay.
And then it was a bit of an altercation there too.
Okay. All right.
He's a pretty big boy.
Okay.
Stout. Took two of us to get him.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
All right. I see those calluses on your hands. I mean, a guy who lifts weights and moves weights around by those calluses.
Yeah, it's everyone's got their thing, but you wouldn't want to have soft hands.
Exactly. Your line of work.
You gotta get something done.
Yeah.
So
being a police officer is like a job that you're kind of risking your life in a lot of ways to do that every day. And so talk to us about your family and kind of what they mean to you and their support, and you.
Yeah, they especially when I got started in this, my Bella and Clayton, my two kids, my son Clayton and daughter Bella, were 7-8 years younger than they are now. And I know that my dad to me was kind of my role model. He was like my hero. And he didn't do anything fancy, but he got up for work every single day, 6 days a week. He built swimming pools, a super difficult job, especially in the summertime. And he was just bulletproof. And I kind of wanted to, in my own way, be a role model, a positive role model for my kids, which kind of helped me through the academy, because I underestimated what it would be like. And I was like, oh, I've been through military boot camp and the training at Herbert Field. This is going to be nothing. But it was, and it lasted for 6 months, But I wanted to be the best for them. So during my time at the academy, I actually used my life experience. When I was a young guy, I could have done way better in school, but I just did enough to get by, And in this situation, I wanted to be the best, and so I actually studied every weekend, and and I ended up coming out with the highest grade point average for the whole class.
Very cool.
And I did that for Bella, because I wanted to impress her.
Yeah,
because she's straight A
student. Academic, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't she when she graduated PCA, same year as Matt, right? And with honors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she had all the little fancy stuff. She's wearing. She earned it.
Yeah, so
the graduation.
Tough crowd, and they do a good job of cutting me some slack. Sometimes I might come home and with a chip on my shoulder or something from a rough day, and and they definitely make sacrifices in the sense that there's been important events in their progress that I wasn't able to be there for because work schedule or whatever. It's kind of like certain events and stuff like that. And then now, since I am part of the special detail for disaster response, and part of the chainsaw teams with the chainsaw crew. So when hurricane hits, we get our saws and our equipment, and then we head down the road and just cut trees and clear the roadway to kind of get things flowing again. So in a sense that they will be sacrificing when the storm hits, they have to be self-sufficient because I'm not going to be able to be there. It's about like clearing the roads and stuff like that. So
Wow. You mentioned your son Clayton. How old is he?
he is 16.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about martial arts a little bit ago. I think you mentioned a Brazilian jiu-jitsu movement. It's my understanding Clayton's pretty good at all that stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. He has maybe, I think, 5 years under his belt. Like,
Yeah.
so he is the equivalent of like an adult blue belt. So
Okay.
yeah.
So the question is, has he ever tried you? First of all, and then secondly, how did he do if he did try you?
Well, there was a time maybe a year ago or something that we locked up. I mean, it was all in fun and games, but the next thing you know, we're on the ground, and I'm thinking, hold on a second, I better watch out or I'm fixing to get caught up here. That's how I felt about it. And but since then, he has done grown another couple of inches and probably put on 10 or 15 more pounds.
Muscle?
He's pretty solid, yeah.
Yeah.
He is. He's like a tree stump. You know?
Okay.
He's taller than I am and
Okay.
probably outweighs me by about 10 pounds.
Okay.
So,
You had that mindset of your dad being bulletproof, so I'm sure Clayton's got that for you. So
I wouldn't,
yeah.
So I can't let him take me out. He might.
Can't let it. No.
Yeah.
Right. Would you share your salvation testimony? When did you get saved?
I'd say it's probably maybe adolescent time frame, maybe around 11, 12 years old. And I was at summer, like Bible, kind of like a summer school,
Yeah.
Vacation Bible school?
vacation Bible school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
And I was there with neighborhood friends. Everyone had went to the church is still there actually down 9 Mile Road there a little ways. Take a ride on Jernigan and you go down a little ways and it's over there on the right.
Okay.
And it was like I had been to church quite a bit prior to that, and something about that particular day or something I got the courage and I felt the
Conviction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Do you remember the
went on
person? Was it a
No.
person led you to the Lord? Yeah.
No.
Okay. Now, what about your wife? Like, how did the two of you meet?
I'm born and raised here, and so is she. And she went to Pine Forest High School, and I went to Tate High School.
Okay.
And graduated, and then now Pensacola State College. Back in the day, it was Pensacola Junior College.
Okay.
And I met her second semester there in chemistry class.
Oh, for real?
Yep.
So was there immediate chemistry?
Yeah, there was. I mean, yep. There
All
was.
right.
Yep.
So nowadays these kids talk about risen girls up. Like, did you do anything to kind of smooth talk your way into a relationship?
I wasn't
with her?
very smooth back then, and it wasn't smooth, but I was trying.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it worked.
Yeah,
It worked.
I guess.
How
Here
many
we
years
go.
have you been married now?
23.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah, we were together for 5 years and then got married, so we got 28 years together.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Yep.
So you, I think you told me you're 48.
Yes.
So you met her when you were about 20?
19.
Yeah. Britt and I were married at 18 and 19. So
Okay.
we got married real young. And you were telling me before the podcast, you and I share the same birthday.
September 16th.
That's my birthday. Yeah. So we just celebrated. I'm 45, you're 48. So that's cool.
Yeah, I'm 9/16/76.
I'm 9/16/79.
Okay.
All right.
Wow.
You got me. You got me by a
Look
little
at
bit.
that.
Yeah.
Something else he said interesting off the podcast was something about how Pensacola is like top 5 in traffic accidents
It
in
is.
Florida.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I'm not sure, like, because they have commission studies to try to figure it out. Like, is the road designs around here? Do we need more northwest-south corridors or what? But per 100,000 people, Escambia County, Florida, is the most dangerous place to be on the road. And we don't have as many wrecks as Jacksonville or Orlando or Miami, but considering we're a city of 500,000 people versus a couple million, it is as far as a trooper working, and I'm not trying to throw shade on any of my coworkers here, anybody that's listening, but an Escambia County trooper, we have, our volume is more than Santa Rosa, Okaloosa, Walton combined.
Okay.
The call volume.
Mm-hmm.
Now the guys that work over there, I'm not, they there's not as many of them, so the load gets spread between fewer people, so they're just as busy as we are. But we definitely, there's never a point where you can open up the computer and look, something's going on out there and around town, around here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we feel it because we're always in traffic.
I know. I mean, me and Kelly, my wife, were just talking about that today. You can't just go somewhere like you used to.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's a trek.
Yeah,
to
right.
try to get across town. Certain times a day, it's you might as well 45 minutes to an hour of just sitting in a car.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, 7 years or so ago is when I had my motorcycle accident. And so I do joke, and I'm kind of serious at the same time, about Pensacola drivers, because one almost killed me, and I'm thankful I was wearing a helmet that day.
Where was that at? What happened?
So it was Kingsfield Road, and I was heading, I guess that would be eastbound. And if you know where, Pine Forest Road, when you go north past 9 Mile and you keep going north on Pine Forest, it tees at Roberts. It kind of tees at Roberts Road, but it goes into a subdivision. So anyhow, you go through that subdivision, you get to Kingsfield.
Yes.
So there was a lady. It's always a lady. But anyhow, that's crazy. Anyways,
no.
So I'm coming down.
Canceled.
I'm coming down Kingsfield heading east.
We're canceled. We're
canceled.
We're done.
Yeah. I'm on the motorcycle, and I have a Harley. Had a Harley, and I always thought if they don't see me, they'll hear me with the sound of a Harley. But she didn't see me or hear me. But so I'm just coming down, and she pulls out, and there's no way I can stop. She pulls out right in front of me, so I T-bone her. And that catapulted me up over the vehicle, so I toppled around a bunch. I broke both of my wrists and my left ankle. I had road rash head to toe. I had internal organ issues where my bladder shut down for 18 days. So it rung my bell for sure. But like I say, toppling around like that, I super glad I had my helmet on. As a pastor, my vocation is dependent on my mind. I need to be able to recall, "Thus saith the Lord," and counsel people and preach and all that. So, because it's not the law in Florida to wear a helmet. So there were days I didn't wear a helmet, but I'm just super thankful I was that day.
Yeah.
I didn't see any of that coming. So yeah, Pensacola drivers, man, one of them almost got me.
Yeah, it's good that you went over the vehicle instead of that sudden stop.
Oh, you're right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Mr. Manning, so I saw Bella today at lunch. I told you that before the podcast, and I said, what do I need to know about your dad before I go on the podcast with him? And one of the things she mentioned, specifically about the Bible, was Genesis 6. She said, you've been studying Genesis 6. So talk to us about that.
Well, I'm being in shape and fitness training is my number one thing. My other thing, that everyone's got, some people like to go golfing or fishing or whatever. I like doing research on conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And I'm really big on pre-flood civilization right now. Like what was going on before the flood?
Is that the antediluvian civilization?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot more to that story than we are aware of.
Sure.
And part of it has to do with the Nephilim and Genesis. And the big question there is, like, when it speaks of the sons of God, who are they referring to? What does that mean? And I think, that's the big question. You answer that, you can kind of get an idea of what was going on there.
Yeah.
There are theories on, is it fallen angels? Were they demons? Aliens? There's, advanced humans.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Those conspiracies are fun.
Yeah.
They're fun to think about.
Yes.
So what's your conclusion about the sons of God? What do you think?
Yes. So fallen angels.
That's what I think too.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was the rebellion or whatever, and Lucifer, and a couple of them joined up with Lucifer. They had their own little thing going on down here on Earth, and that's where the each one they had their own, in my opinion, they had their own enclaves, different fallen angels with different tribes, and So you had the Nephilim, which are the direct descendants of the fallen angels with human wives, and then the hybrid offspring and that's a whole nother story too, with stories like Gilgamesh, and so David and Goliath. Some of those stories, that those people or beings or whatever that are being described in those stories are the hybrids or the offspring of the Nephilim.
And it's really, really interesting. I found out recently that Peter talks about it in 2 Peter 2. He references this account in Genesis 6, and he talks about how if God spared not the angels that sinned, and he talks about Noah in the same account, and he also references Lot in the Old Testament. And it's just really, I think it's pretty clear from the Bible that the sons of God are fallen angels.
Yeah, I do too.
So, and I think it's referenced 4 times in Hebrew and 1 time in Aramaic, the sons of God, that phrase. And I think every time it's referring to angelic beings. So I think that's pretty clear. And
and that kind of would explain some of the technology that was
the pyramids,
around.
dude.
Yes.
Now we're getting to more conspiracy.
There
Dun,
is,
dun, dun.
Yeah, anybody with a set of eyes and a few brain cells and looks into the situation, the explanation for how the pyramids were built is not what happened.
Right. It's not. It's crazy.
Not. So there are some structures, not only in Egypt, but there's Peru, ancient India, that they all share a common like architectural cue that you can look across all the regions and be like, they're very similar, and there's no way that they're not related in some sense.
We can't replicate some of the stuff that we have. We can't even make it today. Not just how did they have the technology, but like we cannot make it today. There's multiple instances throughout geography and like other archaeological things that like we find and we're like, what in the world? How did they get this?
Right.
So the explanation that I'm actually like delving down at the moment is that architecture came from angelic technology, which was part of the pre-flood civilization, and when that was wiped out, and the reset occurred, that type of technology and knowledge was lost or forbidden to be like transmitted. So that's what I think.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting.
A lot of questions I wish I could answer. I want to know who did that? Who built those pyramids?
I really hope when we get to heaven one day that we just get to see all the questions that we have answered, and we get to watch it when we get to heaven.
Yeah, like almost like on a projector screen.
Yeah, sit down, give me some popcorn, dude, and I am
It's a popcorn.
chilling. Yeah,
It's a heavenly popcorn.
yeah. I want to find out.
Yeah,
all
right now we see through a glass darkly, but one day we'll behold him face to face. We'll get all that clarity on all this stuff. That'll be good. Okay, so let's switch gears here and talk a little bit about politics. So when this podcast comes out, the election will have already happened.
That's a scary sentence.
Here we are before the election. You got any predictions?
Oh man, I don't know. My feelings are that of the two choices, it's very clear that we want to go down a road of like repair, rebuild, restore the country, trying to like reestablish a better way. Make America great again. Right. Trying to be a slogan, but versus the alternate, which I just see it going down to unrepairable.
Yeah.
Another 4 years of this.
So you think Trump will get the office?
Well, I that is my wish.
Yeah.
But and I don't know 100%.
Yeah.
There's just like I lost quite a bit of faith in the system with how the last election played out.
Me too. Yeah. Election integrity is a big issue.
Yeah.
That's the scariest part of it all.
Yeah.
It's like in a normal society, I think most people would look at Trump over Kamala and be like, yeah, let's pick her. But we can't even have the...
You say let's pick her, you think most people would say that?
No, let's pick him, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most logic thinking people would be like, let's pick Donald Trump to be our next president.
Yeah.
But we can't even have that that baseline of it's a fair election anymore. That's kind of like, because that's even in question.
Right.
You know?
You'd think both parties, Democrats and Republicans, would do everything they could to bolster, people's mind and to say, yeah, let's require IDs and let's make sure people are citizens, and as opposed to just be like, oh, stop it with your election integrity conspiracies. We're fine. Instead of telling us to just shut up about it, you'd think they would do everything they could to just validate there is integrity here.
And I think that's because the system answers to someone other than the people.
Unfortunately.
And those special interests, they're steering the boat right now.
Yeah.
And all the suggestions that you just made would all make sense, and it seems like common sense.
Right.
But I don't think that the direction that they're trying to steer us. It may be good for a few, but not everyone.
Right. It's true. So you were saved when you were about 12. How would you, am I right to say 12? Okay, yeah. How would you say your Christian worldview, your relationship with Christ has impacted your career in law enforcement?
Well, I mean, I'd say a big one that kind of I follow and a creed that I live by is I treat others as I would want to be treated. Do unto others as you have them do unto you.
It's in the Sermon on the Mount. Yeah, Jesus teaches that. Yeah.
It is. It's my thing, and I am very reasonable. And in our line of work, you have a certain amount of officer discretion. And my job in some cases is to make an impact on someone. And have one of those like teachable moments, and I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah, that's good.
So without sometimes you have someone's life in your hands as far as their future and criminal backgrounds, records, and all this kind of stuff. And so I try not to be judgmental, and I treat people like I would want my family members to be treated if they were like in contact on the side of the road with somebody.
That's great. Yeah. Talk to us about, and I want to kind of give a lengthy question here, but about like how your previous experience in the Air Force and then now these years in law enforcement, like that can harden a man. You have to be a tough guy in the Air Force and a tough guy in law enforcement, and it can have a psychological effect on you. And we interviewed Dr. Barry Walker, who is a criminal justice professor at Pensacola Christian College. He was also, I think, 26 years in law enforcement before he retired to become a teacher. And he mentioned that the average civilian will have like maybe 2 or 3 encounters with law enforcement because they just weren't paying attention when they're speeding or whatever it is in their life, like 2 or 3. And he said those are traumatic experiences for a civilian. Like most people have had just a handful of tickets. They're going to remember most of the details of each citation. But he said a law enforcement officer will have like 800 encounters. You a civilian, you get 2 or 3 encounters, but as a law enforcement officer, you're encountering people and you deal with hostile people, and like just that whole profession can harden a man. So like, what are the things you're trying to do? First of all, would you say yes, that the profession can kind of harden you and affect you psychologically in a negative way? Would you agree with that? And then if so, what are you trying to do to make sure that you kind of keep healthy mentally?
Well, without a doubt, it will, just like you get these calluses on your hand, your soul, your spirit or whatever can develop calluses from multiple encounters like what you're describing. And it's basically a requirement, like what we were talking about earlier, that, the wrong person with the wrong mindset, they're out there to get over on people, and they will analyze, and it's, out there on the street, sometimes it's survival of the fittest, and, they'll size you up, and if they think that they can win, they're going to try you. And so when I train people, I'm a FTO, so I train when we get the new guys and stuff. And young ladies, young men that I get a hold of, sometimes they're like really good people, nice kids, and I just explain to them that, say there was a female, she was like 22 years old, got hired on with the Highway Patrol. Her previous job was a bartender. So, and I told her, I was like, hey, Marissa is cool lady, cool young lady, very friendly, great, easy to get along with. I said, but when you're out here in uniform, you need to be Trooper Penna. And Trooper Penna is not nice. Trooper Penna is courteous when appropriate, but you got to be able to turn it on. And I was like, if you have to come up with even like almost like a character, but the person that you are when you're out of uniform, cool, but that's not going to fly out here on the street.
Because you got to be an authority.
Yeah, you got to be able to take control of the situation. And I'll give you a quick story about the authority. When I was a brand new trooper, I was on a wreck down at Cervantes and Green Street. So right there, like the ground zero for the criminal activity in Pensacola. It was active prostitution, all kind of crazy stuff going on. I'm sitting there in my car working on paperwork, and I see a young lady go by. She's, appeared to be a prostitute. And she was like out there going back and forth in front of my car, and then I noticed there was like a young man, we'll call it her pimp or whatever, was like standing kind of off to the side but watching what was happening. And at one point, I made eye contact with her, and she mouthed, "Help me."
Oh wow!
And I was like, "Oh boy, here we go." So, and we received training on that particular scenario, just like that. And so I get out of the car, I walk over there, I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" She immediately comes over to me, but then here he comes. He walks over there. They start arguing, and I'm like, I'm new, I'm fresh. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I can or can't say, but I know what I'm supposed to say. So I start saying it, but I'm not saying it with any authority. I'm just like, reading lines or something basically, because I had never done that before. And I'm dealing, I'm a decent guy, family man, veteran. And I haven't been hardened by the streets yet. So I'm out here talking to a pimp and a prostitute, and they're like, they're on another level from where I'm at. And I'm trying to like get this situation de-escalated, and I'm not having any luck. So I had to call for backup, and their voices were starting to raise. People were starting to gather. And, like clockwork, within about 2 or 3 minutes, here comes a deputy, because it's always, we're so few of us. When we call for backup, it goes to the sheriff's office, and they always back us up. And here comes a Deputy Tahoe pulls into the parking lot. Young scruffy deputy like swings the door open, gets out of the car and walks over there, and he looks at that dude, and I can't repeat what he said to him here, but he told him basically
he was the authority.
I ain't playing, and you know it.
Right.
And the guy basically like tucked his tail, put his head down, and walked away. And then he looked at the young lady, and he's like, "Oh, I hadn't seen you in a while," and he had a few choice words for her, and she turned around and went the other direction. And then he looked at me, and he was like, you got it from here? I was like, yeah, I guess that's how it's done, huh?
Yeah.
And he got back in the truck and left, and I was like, wow, that's, one day, hopefully I can get there,
Yeah, right.
And it goes to what you were saying, the question about being hardened. So to the next part of your question, to answer, yes, absolutely, it will change you. And it can change you for the worse if you don't monitor the situation and mitigate some of that stuff. And to like decompress, you have to decompress. For me, I have an outlet of weight training, and
Which, and I want to know the other things you do as well, but just to pause you real quick, I like to tell our church people that exercise is the most underrated antidepressant on the planet. Like people not just physically, people should exercise for physical reasons, but for mental reasons.
Absolutely.
It is such a decompression kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's the chemical release in the brain with
absolutely
with certain hormones and stuff like that.
Endorphins and all that.
Yeah. Just like getting a little bit of sunlight every day or when you can is absolutely good for you.
Yeah.
But so I'll try to decompress. I mean, not necessarily saying I win the battle every time, and Kelly will definitely be the first one to vouch for that, and it comes to a certain point where she's like had enough. She's like, hey, look, I'm sorry you had a bad day, but you're home now. So
sure, yeah.
Go outside and shake it off and come back inside,
Sure, yeah. That's what a good wife does for us too, yeah. I've had similar experiences with my wife, yeah. Just the stress of life and dealing with people. Yeah, that's kind of like a checkpoint. That's good. A few fun questions for you here. So, the stereotype about police officers is donuts.
Yeah.
You got a favorite kind of donut or a favorite place to get some donuts, or do you even eat donuts?
I mean, you can't beat a Krispy Kreme donut hot,
Right, yeah.
right off the mill. But
I was in there the other day.
I don't
smells so good.
really, I don't seek them out.
Okay.
If somebody's got some around, I'm definitely gonna get my share. But
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. What about your favorite restaurant in Pensacola? And do they give you deals as an officer? You come into most restaurants?
Chick-fil-A does, right?
yeah, Chick-fil-A is super good to us.
Good.
And
good.
most places, I'd say 50% of the places around here offer some kind of discount.
Cool. Yeah.
You get up to 50% off in uniform if you're in there. And this community is pro law enforcement. Pretty much everywhere I go, and
Good.
I encounter people that are like appreciative and respectful for
Good.
the most part.
Yeah. So you're getting one meal in Pensacola. Where are you going?
If it was like one meal, I'd have to go to McGuire's.
Oh,
and get
okay.
a steak.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
That's good eating.
Yeah, but my favorite right now, I go through phases. My favorite like lunch spot
Yeah.
that would I guess put a plug in for them is Thai rice.
Okay.
It's over there by Pounders.
Sure. Yeah.
I like that. I like the Eurasian Bistro. I like Pounders.
I do too. Yeah. I'm a big fan. I'm a big promoter at Pounders.
Sonny's.
About
Sonny's and
every pot I
Smokies.
bring up Pounders.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Now I prefer Smokies to Sonny's just because they're Christian owned.
Okay.
I think Sonny's is a national chain or whatever, but Smokies on Pensacola Boulevard,
Yeah, they've been.
they've been there a long time, and they've catered a few events for our church. They always take good care of us too. So, yeah.
Mr. Manning, before we let you go, we talked about a lot of conspiracies on the podcast. We've talked about Genesis 6. We've talked about the election being rigged. So I've got to ask you, before we let you go, did we really go to the moon?
I think we did.
I think we did too.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clear that up.
Yep.
See if you had any take on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we?
But I don't think I totally answered your question as far as my prediction. And like I said, I don't know if it goes to an election and the election is fair. I believe Trump is going to win.
I do too. I think you're right.
That's a prediction. Mark it down.
All right. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
And they'll be hearing this afterwards, so
They will.
they'll know if you were
We'll find
right.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
I hope you're right.
Two assassination attempts already. So
Yeah. Right. He's doing a lot of things right when people are trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did a video on the Strength for Life YouTube channel last week or whatever it was about, because I don't think there's any undecided voters. I think everybody knows who they're voting for pretty much at this point.
At this point.
But I think people are deciding whether or not they're even going to vote. And so what I tell people is, every election for 248 years in American history has been the lesser of two evils. And to me, I'm voting for less evil with President Trump. So that's my thought. I mean, I don't think President Trump's even saved by his own admission. I don't think he's a Christian, but he's a sure lot closer to my biblical Christian worldview than Kamala Harris would be.
Absolutely.
I saw somebody who had a flag out in their yard, it was like on their house or something, and their flag said, "The world needs Jesus and America needs Trump." And that isn't completely true, but there's some truth in that for sure.
Sure, right?
For sure.
I think you're right. Do you have a life verse?
I don't. I'm not well versed in it, and I had talked to Kelly about that last night, and we had went over a few. And I don't know, forgive me for knowing the actual verse, and you could probably, but it talks about battling principalities.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say it's Ephesians 6 you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, spiritual warfare, yeah.
And I think it's very fitting for the times that we live in right now.
Oh, yes, sir, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Well, and law enforcement officers, according to Romans 13, are ministers of God. So you're in a spiritual battle, and you're out there trying to praise those that do good and punish those that do evil. You're an extension of the authority of Almighty God. So I respect a whole lot what you do. One last question. If you could take Kelly anywhere on like a vacation trip, anywhere in the world, money, no object, where would the two of you go?
She's going to hear this.
If money wasn't an option and I'd have to go like on a whirlwind tour of the, like, start in Egypt and end in the Holy Land, probably right through there.
Yeah.
I got to see the pyramids before I die.
Yeah, dude.
There you go. That's cool. Well, officer, is that how do you refer to
trooper?
Trooper. Okay,
Yeah.
Trooper Travis Manning. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I'm going to thank them as well. Thank you for watching the Strength for Life podcast, or maybe you're listening to it. If you're seeing this on YouTube, you can also find this on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. So wherever you're hearing this or seeing this, I do want to encourage you to engage by giving it a thumbs up or giving us a review or sharing it with other people. We so appreciate our guest and my co-host today, and appreciate you being a part of it. If there are ways that I can serve you as a pastor, please let me know. You can email me directly. My email address is pastor@northstonebaptist.org. All right? This has been Strength for Life, and we recognize that God is our refuge and strength, and that He is a very present help in trouble. And to you, I say, God bless you.